To the US now, and we all know President Biden's not up for the job. The guy couldn't run a 7-Eleven, but it turns out his team isn't up for the job either. Check out this post by him advertising his State of the Union speech. Can you spot an error? It's the wrong month. For crying out loud.
It's last month.
It appears we all missed it, and I'm sure it will be that forgettable.
Liz, it's not just the last month. It was last year as well.
Oh.
It said 2023 on it.
Oh, no.
They've clearly gotten the design from last year and just be like, yeah, that'll do. Didn't even bother to change the details. Miranda Devine wrote an incredible article today talking about what an absolute bomb of a President Biden is looking in the lead up to his all-important State of the Union speech. She tells the story of him climbing aboard a helicopter as he's chuffing off after 4 days at Camp David, a long weekend. It seems to be the only weekend he really ever has. And he was asked, what do you say to the Democrats who are really concerned about your terrible polling numbers? To which Biden squinted, frowned, and yelled back, you guys are only reporting this one, 5. I've won the last 5. Of course, this is an outright lie, but we've come to expect that from this president who doesn't seem to know where he is half the time. But that doesn't stop the mainstream media from singing his praises come hell or high water. Here is MSNBC host Joe Scarborough just telling us about how incredible the President of the United States of America is. He's fighting fit.
This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever.
The best Biden ever? I remember when he used to be able to string words together.
The best Biden
Not even North Korea can compete with propaganda that good.
No,
that is
no.
A-level propaganda. But do you remember that guy, Joe Scarborough, his co-host, Mika Brzezinski, said a few months ago, quote, it's our job to control what people think.
That's
and
right.
Clearly, they're continuing to try to do that.
Well, yes, not very successfully, I would have thought. If you look at some of the other polling, which of course Biden would also deny, it's pretty clear that most Americans think the president has mashed potato for brains. We'll leave that to one side, though, because, you know, Joe Biden is as bad as it gets, or we think it's as bad as it gets. It could potentially get worse because, of course, remember, if the president died tomorrow, we would end up with Kamala Harris as the President of the United States. Now, we know her expertise is in word salads. She talks absolute nonsense. She cackles at her own jokes, on and on it goes. Have a look at this. Tell me whether or not you think she's had a couple of sherbets beforehand.
Because when we think about the strength of our democracy, you know, I think that there's a duality to the nature of democracy. When it's intact, oh, it's so strong in terms of what it does to uphold and protect individual rights and freedoms. So strong in its nature. And it is very fragile. It will only be as strong as our willingness to fight for it.
As she is fond of saying quite often, she looked quite unburdened by what has gone before in that clip. I mean, what is she talking about? Every time she opens her mouth, it's just absolute nonsense comes out. Like, the wire's not connected properly up there.
Unburdened by what has gone before. I don't think anything went before she said
well,
that. She
I
just
think
opened her mouth and started speaking.
I think a few beers might have gone before that.
She talked about the duality of democracy, and then it was like, I had a thought, and then she completely lost it.
Yeah. And we've all been there, right? But just not that often where you're like, I had a banging point to make. I cannot think of anything. I'm just going to talk to fill in the time until it reoccurs to me. But we just showed you that almighty clip from MSNBC host Joe. Check out this masterclass from Republican Marjorie Greene. She represents the 14th District of Georgia. Masterclass. Here it is in how to handle the lefty-leaning media.
And can you tell me why so many people that support Donald Trump love conspiracy theories, including yourself? He seems to attract lots of conspiracy theorists.
Well, let me tell you, you're a conspiracy theorist, and the left and the media spreads more conspiracy theories. We like the truth. We like supporting our Constitution, our freedoms, and America first. So,
what about Jewish space lasers? Tell us about Jewish space lasers.
No, why don't you go talk about Jewish space lasers? And really, why don't you? How about that?
Thanks. Thank you very much.
She is not being led by this woman at all. This is such a common accusation. Anyone slightly right-leaning who was probably 5 minutes ago centre of centre is now radical, right-wing, extremist, and always with that goes the label of conspiracy theorists, despite the fact that if you're keeping score, the conspiracy theorists are up like 20-0 at the moment, especially after the last 3 years.
So the left have not changed their tactics at all. They've always smeared rather than argued. What's changed, and you've got to credit Trump, I think, for the change, is that Conservatives have stopped trying to explain and taking reporters at face value and instead have called them on their rubbish.
Fake
and
news.
said, we're just not even going to bother answering you and we'll treat you with the disdain that you deserve.